Hi everyone, I'm Locke and welcome back to the channel. I've been to Japan 13 times and in today's video I'll be covering the top places you should be visiting in Japan, the top experiences you should try out in Japan. I'll also be giving a COVID update as of the time of this recording, and I'll also be giving the tips on the best airports and airlines you should be using when you're visiting Japan. If you appreciate this content, all I ask is a like, and without further ado, here is a map of Japan, which I'll be referencing in today's video. The first place you should be visiting, if it's your first few times going to Japan, is Tokyo or Kansai region, Osaka being the major city within Kansai. Either of these areas should be good enough for you to spend at least 5 days worth. Any less than that would do these areas injustice. The reason why I say either Tokyo or Kansai is because these are the two metropolitan hubs within Japan, and you'll for sure get your fair share of entertainment, nightlife, culture, the hustle and bustle, and everything Japan has to offer just by going to these two areas. Oh, by the way, before we continue, I just want to say in today's short video, we can only skim the surface, so I'm only going to touch the highlights and I won't delve into specifics here. For example, this is a book about Tokyo, and just Tokyo itself, we can talk for an entire video. So I hope you understand. We're just going to skim the surface in today's video. So speaking of Tokyo, I won't get into specifics, but here are the areas I would hit. Tsukiji Market, Sensoji Temple, and areas like Harajuku, Shibuya, Shinjuku, and Ginza. If you just go to those places, you'll experience most of what Japan's metropolitan area would provide. Also, as it relates to Tokyo's surrounding area, there are sort of 3 more areas that you need to visit. The first 2 relate to Mount Fuji. I'm assuming a lot of people who go to Japan want to see a view of Fujisan or Mount Fuji. So those 2 areas would be Kawaguchiko and Hakone. Now Hakone is more popular. It's a more popular tourist spot. It has more to offer outside of views of Mount Fuji than Kawaguchiko. However, Kawaguchiko has better views of Mount Fuji, arguably the best views. And there are many hotels, I've lived in one, where you can be in an onsen and in your hotel room, you can see a view of Mount Fuji. So please consider those 2 areas if you want to see a view of Fuji Mountain and be in an onsen and just relax in a rural-ish area of Japan that's slightly outside Tokyo. The third area that, for those of you who like to shop, is Karuizawa. Arguably, this is the best shopping outlet I've ever been to because it provides brands that I don't see in any other outlet here in the United States or Canada. I've never been to an outlet quite like this. For example, they have brands like Prada, Gucci, and Bottega Veneta. So let me know if you know of any other outlets that have brands like that. Oh, and one more tip for Tokyo, make sure you fly into Haneda Airport, especially if your country's primary aircraft carrier is Star Alliance. I'll get more into this later. So in terms of the Kansai area, the reason why I say Kansai is because while Osaka is the largest city, you'll need to go to Kyoto, Nara, and Kobe as well. Each area has its own uniqueness as a tourist, and you'll need to check those places out. Now first up, Osaka. Osaka is much like Tokyo. The only difference that I'll say from having been to both Tokyo and Osaka many times is that Osaka is more of a street food, yaki style food scene. So if you like food such as yakitori, takoyaki, okonomiyaki, those types of food, then Osaka is the place to be. Otherwise, Osaka has the same amount of hustle and bustle, and you'll definitely get your fair share of Japanese metropolitan life and tourist attractions. The area that I would recommend visiting in Osaka would be Dotonbori, which is a street that's filled with hustle and bustle. You'll get your fair share of entertainment there, and I recommend this restaurant right here. You won't be able to miss it, and if you need the name, just Google Dotonbori crab restaurant and you should be able to find it. I've had it many times, it's amazing. So in terms of Kobe and Nara, those two places are optional if you're short on time. However, for Nara, there's a famous park where you can meet the most polite deer in the world. They will bow to you, provided you feed them crackers, and they're just amazing. If you don't believe me, here is a clip from a few years ago when I went to Nara of me feeding the deer and the deer bowing to me. In terms of Kobe, well, Kobe has Kobe beef, which looks like this. This is a picture that I took a few years ago when I was having Kobe beef, and it was amazing. That's all I have to say. Some of you may ask, well, I want to go to Tokyo and Osaka. I only recommend that if you have more than 5 days worth. And when you do, I'd recommend making one of them your base, and then taking the Shinkansen, and also getting a JR pass, and taking the Shinkansen from either Osaka to Tokyo or Tokyo to Osaka. More on that later. Some of you may also ask, well, I've been to Tokyo and Osaka many times, so I don't want to go to these places. Where should I go? Well, the answer is you should go to either Tokyo or Osaka first, just for like less than a day or a day. Make it your base, stay overnight, then take the Shinkansen to other areas. What other areas? Well, there's 3 main areas that I would go to. They're all very rural. You kind of get away from that hustle and bustle life, and you get to experience more of that local Japanese culture. So the first place I would recommend is Hokkaido. Hokkaido is the northern part of Japan, Sapporo being the major city. There you can experience a multitude of things, but mainly they're known for amazing seafood. I know Japan in general has good seafood, but I've been to Hokkaido and the seafood is crazy good. You can also take a look at lavender flowers in the summer. And also for those of you who like skiing, I heard there's a really nice ski resort called Niseko. In terms of other rural areas, I would recommend Wakayama. I've been there as well. I took a tour for a few days around Wakayama. That is around this part of Japan over here. So Wakayama is where you get to experience the very rural life of Japan. You get very good local seafood. You get to live in tatami style hotels. Not that you can't get that in the city like Tokyo, but living in tatami styles is both harder to find and very expensive when you're in a metropolitan area. But if you're in the rural parts like Wakayama, you can easily find these hotels and they're pretty economical, I would say. So you can experience this kind of life. I should mention, in these places though, the towns usually shut down at like 9 or 10 p.m. So all you can find at night is like a Lawson. Lawson looks like this. It's a convenience store in Japan, which is amazing, by the way. I recommend you check out convenience stores in Japan and actually eat at convenience stores. So those are 2 areas I would recommend if you're sort of done with Tokyo and Osaka and you want to experience something. I'm sure there's other rural areas as well, such as Kagoshima or Okinawa. Unfortunately, I haven't been to those areas, but I would love to. So if you have, let me know in the comments. So now let's talk about what you should experience in Japan, agnostic and independent of where you do go in Japan. It doesn't matter where you go in Japan, there's a couple experiences that you need to try out if you do go to Japan. So we already mentioned feeding deer at Nara Park, looking at 2 areas where you can see Fujisan, eating Kobe beef, And I missed one. That would be eating matcha in Kyoto. But there's a couple other things that you need to check out. So one thing you should do when you go to Japan is go to an onsen. I mentioned for the two places you can see Mount Fuji, there are great onsens there. Onsens are Japanese hot springs. You go in naked, okay, let's put it that way. But it's really, really hot, but it has a different feeling than, say, a hot tub you would go to in your pool. It's definitely a unique experience that you need to try out. Another thing you should do is go check out vending machines. Literally, they're on every corner. You can't miss them. But what I mean by that is actually take the time to observe the different types of vending machines that are available. You can buy not just drinks, but cigarettes, masks, sake, umbrellas. I've heard of all sorts of things. A quick Google search shows that you can find pretty much anything in these vending machines. By the way, about 10 years ago when I went to Japan and I was buying a drink from a vending machine, I saw this. Notice this button over here in this picture. It says atatakai. Atatakai means hot. So this vending machine will actually spit out a hot drink, like a hot green tea in this case, for you. So that's actually really cool. They've had these forever, so make sure you try that out. The blue buttons are cold if you can't read Japanese. Now the next thing might not be for everybody, but it certainly is for myself, which is to go shopping. That's right. I'm talking about shopping for clothes and brands that you normally are familiar with, such as Nike, Adidas. The reason why I say this is because the sizes and fitting is much different in Japan. If you're a smaller guy like myself, you'll really appreciate this because let me show you this t-shirt that I have, and this will explain the point. Japanese sizes tend to fit smaller. So if you have trouble finding a nicely fitted t-shirt or pants or shorts in your own country, in this case in North America, the sizes for me generally are slightly bigger. The Japanese brands of the same brands that you can find here, they're gonna have a lot of different styles that you'll appreciate. So make sure to go shopping. So as you can see, this is a Yonex t-shirt that I have that I bought in Japan. You can buy these t-shirts in USA or Europe, but what I can tell you is in the United States, you won't be able to find double XS. In USA, the smallest that I've been able to find, USA and Canada, is XS. And so for me, my sizing, XS fits a little large for me, and so this is perfect. And so this would be a prime example of why you would want to shop in Japan. So the next few items are about food. First, American chains like McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King, fast food chains. I know this might not appeal to you, but just check out this rice burger. It's a filet o fish McDonald's rice burger. You gotta try that, right? It's really good. McDonald's and KFC, it's not as crap as it is in North America. It's much better. So make sure to give it a try. The second thing I would recommend is izakayas. These are sort of like Japanese drinking tapas bars, if you will. These are sort of like tapa bars where traditionally when office workers get off work late at night or not at 9 or 10 p.m., they go to these bars and drink with their boss because the boss asked them to go drink, and then they repeat the cycle every day. Hence why Japanese working culture is so stressful. But you're a tourist, so just go enjoy it. Go to the local ones where they don't even have English menus. You will get the best experience where you just order a whole bunch of tapas, point to the pictures if you can't read Japanese, get a few beers, get some sakes, you'll have a great time. Finally, what I would recommend is trying exotic foods. So that would be fugu, which is pufferfish. I've had it over 10 times, so I'm still alive, so don't worry about it. There's actually, if I did some research and I found out that there's pufferfish that are farmed and they're not actually dangerous, but they don't want to market that, because if they market and tell people the truth that pufferfish is actually no longer dangerous, then it sort of steals away from that mystery or that suspense. So I don't know, you do your research. I haven't really done in-depth research on that, but it tastes great. It's probably one of the best tasting fish, raw or cooked, that I've ever had, and you can only have that in Japan. Actually, scrap that. You can have it in China too, but are you gonna take your chances with that? And then finally, chicken sashimi. Now, I know, time out. Chicken sashimi, I'll say it one more time. Chicken sashimi. I had it in Nagoya a couple years ago. It tasted great, in my own opinion. I know the thought of that might sound disgusting, but it's an exotic food. Try it if you want. It's available to you. I'm just bringing that to light. So now on to tips. I have 3 quick tips for you. First one, fly into Haneda Airport. I mentioned this in the past. Tokyo has 2 airports, Haneda Airport and Narita Airport. The difference really is, if you're going to Tokyo, I'm certain you're going to Tokyo. You're not going to some outskirts of Tokyo. If that's the case, then Haneda Airport is anywhere from around half an hour of travel time from the airport to Tokyo Central or downtown, whatever you want to call it. Narita is like 1.5 to 2 hours. So you're going to be stuck in traffic on the way from the airport to your hotel in Tokyo, and also when you have to fly back to your home country. That's like 3-4 hours wasted. First couple times I went to Japan or Tokyo, I went to Narita Airport, and then somebody told me about Haneda, and that was a game changer. So make sure to fly to Haneda. The second tip I have is airlines and points. Now, if I want to get into this in detail, it would have to be another video where I explain airlines, points, credit cards, and hotels. And I'm a huge fan of points, but I'll just dumb it down for you in this quick tip. Whatever your home country's airline carrier is that you prefer to fly with, make sure you understand what alliance it's part of and book your ticket to Japan accordingly. If you're going to Japan, there's really 2 airlines, ANA, All Nippon Air, and JAL, Japanese Air. Generally speaking, those are the 2 airlines that Japan operates. ANA is with Star Alliance, and JAL is with Oneworld. So let me give you an example. If you're from the United States, if you generally like to fly United Airlines, then don't book JAL, book ANA. Because United Airlines is Star Alliance and so is ANA, whenever you fly one or the other, you get to collect the points with both of them. So if you fly ANA, you get to use those points for your next United flight. So even if the JAL ticket is slightly cheaper, you're probably better off paying a little bit more, buying the ANA flight, so that, because you usually like to fly United Airlines when you're going to other places and you're from the United States, so that those points you accumulate from the ANA flight can be used with the United Airlines flights in the future. Vice versa, if you're also from the United States, but you like to fly American Airlines, then fly JAL if even the JAL flight costs slightly more than the ANA flight. So I hope that makes sense. And finally, whatever credit card, whatever bank you're with, make sure those points also offer one of 2 things. First, it offers the standard travel insurance and maybe even concierge. I once used concierge with my American Express to book a restaurant in Japan because I couldn't speak Japanese, but because the Amex concierge has somebody that can speak Japanese, they helped me book the restaurant reservation. So those come in really handy. And second of all, make sure the points that you accumulate with that credit card, with that bank, also align perfectly with that airline alliance that I talked about earlier. So you might have a United Airlines credit card or a American Express credit card that accumulates MR points that can be transferred one-to-one to a Star Alliance partner airline, which then you can use to book ANA flights or United flights, and or vice versa. So I know that's a little complicated, but that's a quick crash course. I'll do a full video if you like in the future about the ecosystem of points and how you should optimize all of this. The third tip is if you want to go to Tokyo and Osaka, make one of them your base first and then go to the other one as if that's your trip within a trip. So for example, go to Tokyo and then stay in that hotel. Then let's say you want to go to Osaka for a few days. Then go there, but use the Shinkansen. Drop some of the luggage off in your Tokyo-based hotel. Go to Osaka, then come back to Tokyo for a day. Then that way you can fly out from Haneda or Narita Airport. You don't have to worry about the logistics of, oh, I have to book a flight ticket from my home country into Tokyo, but I have to book one out from Osaka back to my home country. You don't want to deal with that, right? You want to just deal with a return flight. Another advantage for this, other than less hassle, is that Shinkansen from Tokyo to Osaka arguably is more comfortable and you save time as compared with a flight. Let me explain. It's more comfortable, period, in a Shinkansen. If you've never ridden one, it looks like this. It's way more comfortable than a plane. And number two, you might be wondering, how can a bullet train save time as compared to a flight? A flight obviously is faster. You might be right, but here's the thing. With a flight, you have the pre-boarding time, you have the security, you have to wait for boarding, and there might be delays. Shinkansen is never late. You don't have to spend that much time doing the pre-boarding process and all of that. And if you actually add up all that buffer or overhead that you would spend on a flight, like traveling to the airport and whatnot, and then compare that with purely just how much time you spend on the Shinkansen, because all you have to do is go to the train station, which is probably very close to your hotel, board the train as if it was a local subway transit, and you're there. No need for security, no need for baggage or loading, anything like that. So if you actually calculate the time, it works out to be about the same. Now I do want to address the elephant in the room. A flight from Tokyo to Osaka is likely or probably going to be cheaper than a Shinkansen. Of course, if you ride ANA or JAL, maybe it's about the same, but there are low-cost carriers like Peach Airlines, which can get you from Tokyo to Osaka at a very, very cheap cost. But a Shinkansen on average will cost you almost 14,000 Japanese yen or 50 bucks USD. And that's going to definitely cost equal or more than a flight. Alright, so now the question you've been waiting for. Can I go to Japan right now? The answer is no. There's an elephant in the room that we have to address, and that's COVID-19. As of the time of this recording, as you can see from this website, there's currently still a ban on these countries, including United States and Canada. The United States has recently issued a level 3 travel advisory to Japan, indicating a high level of COVID-19 in the country. And from what I've read, that is the case, and there are a couple of spots in Japan that are still in a state of emergency. And from what I've heard anecdotally from my friends in Japan, the reason they have a low vaccination rate, or one of the reasons, is because while, at least in North America, we try to administer the first dose first to a broad audience and then administer the second dose as part of one of the strategies. The Japan strategy is to fully vaccinate the ones that are vulnerable, meaning the older people first. So they give the really old people both 1 and 2 doses, while the rest of the population, the younger folks, don't even get the first dose. So that's how they're prioritizing it, and it's not playing out that well for them. And so if you're still thinking about going to Japan, well, there's still a ban right now from the Japanese side. So unless you're a Japanese person, you actually can't enter Japan. I don't see this changing unless Japan ramps up their vaccination rate. And so I think a realistic expectation is 2022 for a Japanese vacation. That's just my take. Now, we all know flights are actually cheaper the earlier you purchase them. So if I was dying to go to Japan and I want to take a bet, I would buy an airplane ticket right now for, let's say, end of this year or early 2022. That way you probably can find a really good deal on flights. And if you have to, you can cancel the flight if you buy a cancelable ticket, or if you want, you can change the ticket and keep pushing it further and further out, provided there's a minimal fee to do so. So there's many ways around this if you're really desperate, but I would hold off if I were you. So thank you so much for watching this high-level video on where to go and what to do in Japan, as well as a quick COVID update as of the time of recording. If you got any value out of this, all I ask is a thumbs up. And with that, see you next time.